The first group of Jehovah's Witnesses formed in 1870 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Some traditional Christian views are taught by Jehovah's Witnesses, but many are not. They believe that only Jehovah's Witnesses will be saved when their God's Son, Jesus, returns leading a heavenly army to defeat their enemies. After such an event, they believe Jesus will rule the world from heaven with only 144,000 of the faithful Jehovah's Witnesses, as the 144,000 is talked about in the biblical book of Revelation. Actress Michelle Rodriguez is an ex-Jehovah's Witness. When Michelle became an actress, her mother, who wouldn't let her watch Disney movies due to witchcraft and sorcery, told Michelle she was now part of the devil's tool in Hollywood. Michelle said the religion scarred her for life.
Do you think your father was too strict?
Yes. No, he's gonna kill me.
He's gonna get you still worried about that? Well, he feels that he was strict.
I'm glad he said it. Now I'll say it, yes. Did he?
The Jackson family is another example of famous ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. Catherine Jackson is a devout Jehovah's Witness, and she raised all her children in the religion. Even after rising to massive success, Michael Jackson was still a witness, and even on the years he was on tour, he would participate in door-to-door witnessing, but he always donned a disguise as to not be recognized. The Jehovah's Witness organization became angry with Michael over his 1982 album Thriller before it was even released. This caused Michael emotional turmoil, and he called his manager, John Branca, and begged him to destroy the one and only copy of the Thriller music video, which at the time was being edited and hadn't yet been released. The Jehovah's Witnesses claimed Michael's video was promoting demonology, but Michael's manager was able to convince Michael to release Thriller, but with a disclaimer at the beginning of the video stating Michael did not endorse the occult. Still, the Watchtower coerced Michael to apologize for Thriller and say it was something he would never do again. The Watchtower issued Michael's apology in one of their magazine publications called Awake. But only a few years later, LaToya Jackson was disfellowshipped in 1987, and according to the Jehovah's Witness religion, Michael was supposed to shun his sister, something he refused to do. This caused him to disassociate himself from the Jehovah's Witnesses in 1987 at 29 years old. Luke Evans, an actor and singer who was raised in the religion, said, quote, "I absolutely hated it," end quote. Luke left home at 16 because he was gay and homosexuality isn't accepted in the Jehovah's Witness organization, but they say if a member doesn't act on it, then it's accepted. But yeah, no, basically they're against homosexuality, unlike this channel. A few other famous ex-members include Sherry Shepherd, who said the religion destroyed her family, Naomi Campbell, and Donald Glover, aka Childish Gambino. Although the Jehovah's Witnesses organization enjoys its tax-exempt status, the members of this religion are not allowed to vote, run for public office, serve in the military, or recite the Pledge of Allegiance. The Jehovah's Witnesses organization believes in only pledging allegiance to their God and that God's kingdom. They do not believe in humans ruling over one another. Today, an ex-member is sharing their shocking story about being interrogated by the elders at only age 15 and why they fear for family members who are still involved. This is Kai's story, as told to me. Kai, welcome to the channel.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming on. You are the first interview I am doing that is not an anti-MLM one. And
Really?
I told my husband, I was like, this feels like so crazy.
So
Oh my
scary.
gosh. So I put it out there that I was looking to interview somebody from a Jehovah's Witness background, somebody who had left. I come from a fundamentalist background myself. There's a lot to unpack there. That's for a different video. But I wanted to hear from a Jehovah's Witness viewpoint, because from mine was a fundamentalist Christian place.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I come from, church and home. So I know that they're different. And your story, I got several people who emailed me amazing stories. I appreciate everyone reaching out. Your story also really spoke to me because you talked about, it kind of sounded like you were living in a prison at home with just everything that was weighing on you. And you said something about when you were born into it and you were baptized. And I remember that you said, this is important because it's like a legally binding contract for life. And instantly my alarm bells went off. And I thought, that reminds me of what Leah Remini talks about with Scientology, with, I think that the Sea Org, they have to sign a contract that legally binds them for lifetimes, not even just for the rest of their life, for lifetimes. Can you talk to me about what that baptism was like for you, what it really means?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the Jehovah's Witness faith, they believe that like you baptize yourself to Jehovah into the organization of his governing body, basically. So you're entering into, it's a contract between you yourself and God and the leaders of the church. And you're basically vowing your whole life to always be a practicing, faithful, totally bought in Jehovah's Witness. And so I got baptized when I was 8. Okay, I wasn't even old enough to understand that's what it is. I was a child, and in my opinion, I was thinking about this, because I knew you were going to talk about it. It was like I never celebrated my birthday or had any like parties or anything like that. But I would see kids in my congregation or in neighboring congregations like get parties for getting baptized or get gifts or like get some sort of recognition, and I was like, oh, okay, that's all I have to do, like to have a special day or to have like a day about myself. Yeah, to literally to get a present. So I remember being like, okay, I could do it, like and you get to sit like in the convention hall, you get to sit on the floor with the speaker like right in front of you, and they give like a special talk like directed at the baptismal candidates, and then they make you stand and they ask you 2 questions. Do you, I don't know, do you like pledge or do you vow to believe in, or, to serve Jehovah God with, whatever for forever? And you say yes, and everyone, you say it all collectively. If that's not the most thing that I've ever heard in my life, then I don't know what it is. But I was 8 years old, and I am held accountable for a decision that I made when I was also wearing denim jeans under my skirts. Like, you understand? Like, I was a child. Like,
absolutely, you were a minor.
Yeah, a minor.
You were a
I had
minor.
no business to make a lifelong commitment at the age of 8 years old.
So what made you want to speak out? Like, what made you email me and say like, okay, I want to share my story? Because I know how difficult that is. And when somebody doesn't come from like any type of fundamentalist background and they hear you talk about what you experienced growing up, they're like, dude, you're weird, whatever. Or they like, they brush it off like, oh, whatever, it's just church, and it's like, no. It's like, it was a whole different world. So, and it can be hard to speak about especially when people don't understand. And I feel like you're pretty brave coming forward on a public YouTube channel. What made you decide to speak out?
I don't know what I'm doing here, honestly. I think I'm just so tired. I'm tired of not having my family anymore. And not in the way that they don't talk to me, because I do have some minimal contact with my family still. And I'm actually taking a big risk doing this. They might actually stop talking to me after this. But I'm tired of having all of this inside of me and having a platform already where I'm actively calling out people for their wrong behaviors and the way that, they're able to manipulate people. So to sit on this hurts me, to know that my parents are slaves to a system that they know nothing about. I know more about their religion than they do, and it hurts me to know that they're being taken advantage of.
Now, I know you said that you were born into the religion, just like your parents were. So when you say that you know more about the religion than they do, when they've obviously been in it longer than you, what makes you think you understand? What do you think you understand that they do not?
I've done research on the history and how the organization started and like its murky background, and how like the leaders and founders have their own shady histories and their own, dark past, just like how the founders of the MLMs do, they do too, and they've been caught up in a lot of shady things. And I've opened my mind to that, to accept that information, because my parents are actively taught not to seek out outsider information, not to look at any other sources other than what they're being presented with. So just for the sheer fact alone that I have looked outside of strictly the Watchtower publications, I'm able to know like the actual histories of the current governing body members and their current stock holdings, and their fighting in the Supreme Court justice, like all these court cases they're fighting in the Supreme Court right now. And that's just not information that my parents are privy to, because they're actively told not to go and look for it.
And what happens if the church finds out that you do?
You are considered to be an apostate and you're disfellowshipped, which means that your family and all of your friends and everyone who claims to be a Jehovah's Witness basically pretends that you don't exist, and they shun you, and
just
they
for
don't even look at
looking
you.
At information?
Sometimes.
Wow.
Sometimes just for looking, sometimes just for questioning, sometimes for like smoking cigarettes. You can get disfellowshipped for
really
anything.
Kind of random, aren't they? It's always just like, oh, this time you're gone, or like, slap on the wrist. It's never consistent, I've noticed, with fundamentalist backgrounds. Talk to me about the birthdays. Let's go back to that, because you said that, and I remember, like, I did not know much about the Jehovah's Witness background growing up. Or I should say religion. I did not know much about it. In the fundamentalist Christian world, like, we didn't even consider like Catholics real Christians.
Yeah.
So definitely not going to look at Jehovah's Witness like that, or anybody else. So I was just brainwashed to believe that. So I remember hearing, though, when I was in school, I was maybe around middle school, and I had a classmate who was a Jehovah's Witness. And I think I remember like the teacher wanting to do something for her birthday when it was coming up. And they were like, no, she doesn't celebrate it. She's Jehovah's Witness. And I'm like, what's that have to do with anything? Get this girl a cake. Okay. And they were like, no, it's against her religion. And that always bothered me. So talk to me. Did you see like classmates or your friends have birthdays? Did you, growing up as a child, really understand that you were being held back from being celebrated on the day of your birth? And did it affect you? Did it bother you?
Yeah, kind of, because I recognized it, right? Like, obviously you're in school, you see other kids have birthdays. My parents were really cool though. They would like try to offset that by like randomly coming in one day with cakes and treats and stuff, and then I was just the kid whose mom sometimes brought cupcakes, so that's pretty cool. But to see like other people be special, and like to know like my parents, it's no big deal, right? It's just another day. Like, they'll tell me, oh, you're this age now, and that's all that they'll say to me. So I didn't have my first birthday till I was 18, but I always I wanted to. I never felt special as a kid, I guess, and then to be overlooked on what is supposed to be like this one day that's set aside just for you, it just completely bypassed by my family. I don't know. It sucks. It definitely makes you feel like the other.
And why don't Jehovah's Witnesses celebrate birthdays?
It's some scripture. There's the only instances in the Bible where a birthday party is referred to ended up with someone dying. So their theology is that God does not want you to have any sort of celebration for yourself that might potentially put you over him in your eyes or in the eyes of other people. So it's like, they see it as like a word, like a celebration of the self, and therefore like a false god or like idolatry.
Okay. Yeah. Like a celebration of the flesh or whatever.
Yeah. But I think like it's just meant to rid them of any sort of actual individuality. Like they're not even allowed to have a single day that means anything about them.
Wow. What was your home life like growing up? Because I remember in your email, you were like, I still love my family so much. Like they're good people, So what was your home life like growing up in this oppressive religion?
Yeah, I remember like as a kid, I mean, obviously I didn't see it that way. In fact, I remember thinking that like everyone was Jehovah's Witness when I was a kid, like, because that's like what we talk about, like how we're all one big happy family and we're all over the world and so many like different languages and cultures and stuff. So I just always grew up thinking like, oh yeah, everyone thinks this way. And then like as I started going to school, I realized like how different I was. And then it started to make me pretty resentful of my parents as I got older, and just having to constantly deal with being the weird kid or being like the kid who has no friends or can't do anything or, has like strict parents or whatever. I'm the weird church kid. Like I feel like that's all I ever got to be. Like any time that I really wanted to express myself or do something that I was interested in, it was always having to be minimized by, well, this comes first, your spirituality comes first. And I do love my family. Like I don't think I'd be doing this if I didn't love my family. Because I think it's important that people know and like what is really going on. But growing up, my parents are great. I mean, I had a really solid relationship with my mom. Like as a kid, I felt like she was my best friend. We would do everything together. And then just as I got older and I started to realize how much I really longed for just a normal life, it started to get worse. And then after I like pretty much told them that they came out like, well, it came out that I was struggling in my faith. And then they started to see me differently. I feel like I wasn't their kid anymore. I was a roommate or somebody that they just tolerated. That like happened pretty young for me. I was 15 years old when I like got found out for not really believing in the faith anymore. And so it was a long time that I had still to live at my parents' home, and to have like that awkward rift where they're trying to save me. That's what it felt like all the time, was like they were always trying to find a new way to get through to me. And it felt really patronizing at the time, because I knew, I was like, I don't want this. I know that this isn't my life. I was a child, but I was like, I know that this isn't right for me. And so it just felt like they were always like trying to grasp at straws, but when I really needed them, they couldn't help me because they just weren't a part of the same reality that I was in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you mentioned in your email that you, I think at 12 years old, started wanting to have like boyfriends and using the internet to talk to your peers and whatnot, which is a completely normal thing to do.
Totally normal. Yeah.
And you said that's when things started to go downhill for you with your family, and you felt like you were a roommate, and you said you even lived in fear some days of if your parents would even acknowledge you. Can you talk to me about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, to be 12 years old, I mean, I remember having like, what, you remember those oh my God, the iPods? Like the first touchscreen iPods? Yes. Okay. So I got one of those as a gift.
Okay.
Like from my grandma one day, she like went to RC Willey and bought me an iPod. Adorable. And so I was like, oh, this has Wi-Fi capabilities. That's very useful. And I would like use it for my schoolwork, but I mean, I was just curious. When you're kept away from something for so long, all it does is make you want to peek behind the curtain, make you want to like, okay, well, if it's so bad, they like my parents taught me and their religion taught me my whole life that there's nothing for you in this world. Like this world will get you addicted to drugs. You'll be divorced from your family. Your kids will hate you. Your boss will be mean to you. Just like all like these negative things that they tell you, or like they propagandize the world around you to keep you inside the organization. So after so long of listening to that, like this is bad and this is wrong, I'm like, well, is it really? Like, you don't want me to look so bad. That's only making me want to do it more.
Right.
So I think expanding my horizons and actually getting to see bits and pieces, what you can see on the internet, made me, long for my, my chance to leave and just actually see things for myself. So like what all that was is just like I had an Instagram, and I would take pictures of mostly of myself and just like different makeup looks. And I thought that I was going to be a model someday. So I was doing a lot of that sort of stuff. And that's like really innocent. And that's pretty basic for like a 12, 13-year-old person to be on social media, like that.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, like I had a MySpace too. I remember my mom found my MySpace one day and it was like a disgrace, a dishonor to our family. I can't believe you would do this. She made me wait in my room until my dad came home and tell him myself to his face. Like that's how big of a deal it was. Like that I had a MySpace and that I was like talking to boys and stuff. And I was like, this is
Talking to a boy named Tom.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. If that's how my parents react to things when they find out about what's going on in my life, I'm not going to want to tell you anything. I'm never going to open up to you. I'm never going to tell you anything that's going on in my life. And that's difficult because there were times where I wanted my mom to be there for me, dude. Like, I can't even talk to my own mom about my real life, like about what's really happening to me. And I just always wanted her to be someone that I could actually approach with things like the way that, I don't know, like the way that their like books always tell them to be, like listen to your child or help them walk through things. I never felt like I could do that because I was under this constant pressure just to remain perfect or to keep up an appearance with them.
Yeah.
And that sucks, like just being totally unsupported in those like critical years of your life, like 12 to 18 years old.
Even at, any age, it's so painful, but especially during your formative years. Absolutely. And it's very easy to feel so isolated and alone at that time. And I found with some family members trying to talk to them, because it seems like, a lot of religions talk about, or I should say fundamentalist backgrounds talk about forgiveness and acceptance. But if you don't believe in their religion and their way of life, they're not going to accept you. And it's a completely contradicting theory. And I found like when talking with some fundamentalist family members about, the lifestyle I choose to lead that is not like theirs, it's almost like you're so close to seeing the real them underneath, but there's just like this veil, this like wall in between where like it's the indoctrination just talking. And so when you say like you wanted to be close to your mom and like have her there with you to understand you, I can completely understand that. What was it like was that when they started not talking to you as much? How did that come about? Why did that happen? Why did they not?
Yeah. Okay.
Because you were living in the home.
So weird. I was. So I had been on the internet, whatever, for like 3 years. I was like 15 years old. And I was doing pretty good, right? Like I had a whole life at school. I was a completely different person when I left my house. And then when I came home, I kept it pushing. It's just, I don't know. It was like a survival skill, just survival mode. And I remember one day I came home from work. I worked in an elementary school at like 15 years old, came home, and my parents are like, go wash up and get ready because we're going to have some elders or some church leaders come over to talk to us. And so I was thinking like, oh, okay, like they're just going to have dinner with us and then we'll hang out. We're just like sitting in my living room. They're talking, having like, pie and ice cream or whatever. Just having like a good night. And then all of a sudden one of them gets up and leaves, goes out to the car, and then comes back in with an envelope, a manila envelope, and like sets it on our coffee table and is like, we found out about your social media accounts and we just have a couple of questions on like what is really going on here. And I'm like, okay. I'm like 15 years old and I was just attacked in my own home. Like,
so now you're on trial in your living room.
Yeah, exactly. Like it was a setup, dude. Like they didn't even tell my dad that was going to happen. It was out of nowhere. Totally uncalled
Did your mom
for.
No.
No. Women aren't told anything before the man is told.
Of course. So,
yeah.
so it wasn't just in your family that they didn't want you to have social media. It was also within the entire religion. They don't want you to have any social media accounts because they consider that the outside world.
Yeah, kind of, sort of. Like their stance on it has changed a lot since I left. Because back then it was like, if you had one, you were kind of sus. But if you talked about like the church or it was like, nice and proper, then okay, it's fine. But mine, I didn't have any other witnesses on my profile. Like I kept it very secretive because I wanted to be myself. Like
you're just
I'm
doing
trying to
you.
figure out who I am. Yeah, like my biggest offense was that I was like swearing or that I was like posting lyrics from songs that I liked that were, well, maybe not appropriate or whatever. And nothing like that. Right. But they're like going through all of these pictures. They're asking me who's commenting on my pictures. I'm like, I don't know.
So wait, when they pull out this manila, we need to break down this trial because if that happened to me, I would still be livid to this day. So when they pull this manila envelope out and start what do they pull out from it?
Screenshots. Like screenshots from someone's cell phone of my Instagram page, my Twitter, different things that I said, different conversations people had with me in my comments, like a whole bunch of different pictures of me.
And they just printed it off?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they were showing my mom and dad. Oh my God, it was mortifying. It was the worst.
Well, yeah, you probably have PTSD from that. My God, you're a minor and they're like attacking you in your own home and your parents don't even know what's coming. Like, that's not okay. That's not normal in any way. So what did your parents do when they pulled this out and they start accusing you of the sinful things on your social media?
Yeah, well, and that was so crazy because they used that to question me on whether or not I had been having premarital sex. At 15 years old, a grown man, old enough to be my grandfather, asked me in front of my mom and dad if I was having sex.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. How inappropriate. But I grew up in the purity purity movement. Mm-hmm. So, promise rings, all that, Jonas Brothers, like with their little promise rings. So that actually doesn't surprise me as disgusting as it is, but anybody who went through that kind of stuff, and it's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. And what were your parents doing when they were asking you that?
I don't think that they were just shocked. They were just speechless. It was the first time that I've ever seen my dad cry.
Was he crying because he was upset with your social media presence or because he was upset with the elders, or what do you think?
He was upset. I think he was upset because he realized that he didn't know who I was. And I think he was definitely more, they were definitely more disappointed and ashamed of me than they were upset. And I don't even remember how I had the balls to say this, but my mom was like, I want to know what else is out there. And I'm like, you absolutely will not. You will not know. Because after what happened to me, I'm not going through this again.
And so how long did these assholes interrogate you for while your parents sat there?
It felt like hours, honestly. I remember they got to our house at dinner time, 6, 7. I don't think they left until 10 or 11. And it was a school night.
How inappropriate. So they just thought that because, so is the church put over family in that organization?
Basically, because my dad wasn't an elder, but he was like the second tier to that. Like he was a respectable person in the congregation, and he had a lot of responsibilities. And so I'm a reflection of him. And if I'm out of line, then he's out of line, and he needs to get his home in order. So they came to put him in check, basically, to let him know what's going on behind his back. When I just feel like, in my opinion, it's nobody's business what I'm doing. It has nothing to do with how my parents believe. And they were always held accountable for me for my actions because I'm not doing the things that I'm supposed to be doing. So my dad got this is my dad's life, and it means a lot to him. And he had a lot taken away from him because of me, and he was held back from doing the most that he wanted to, that was like on his heart to do, because of who I was.
And that's so manipulative because you weren't doing anything wrong. And yet the church is punishing your dad and saying, we're taking these things away from you because your daughter's like this. And that is so manipulative and such a control tactic of fundamentalist groups and high control organizations. And, it's really sickening. Let's go back to where he asked you if you were having sex or not, and you're 15 years old. Now, in the purity movement that I grew up in the 90s, which was rampant, men were definitely not put under a microscope how the women were. Men were told things like, oh, women are temptresses. They will tempt you.
Yeah.
They will make you stumble. So you need to make sure you look away, and women, you need to make sure that you cover up so you don't tempt a man. It's always the woman's fault. Do you notice anything like that in the Jehovah's Witness religion?
Yes and no. I feel like it's kind of even though. Like one of their church leaders like went on a whole rant back in like 2014 about the tightness of your clothing, and he went in on both men and women. So I think they're pretty like across the board like repressive in both directions. However, like women just don't have any place or say in the structure of this organization at all. Like your best hope is to marry a powerful man.
Oh boy. So did you have like uniforms that you had to wear, or did you have like regulations when it comes to your attire?
It was just like modest. Like you can basically wear whatever you want to wear. It's just like okay. The trippy part is that there is no rules like for that. You're kind of just like left to your own devices and hope that the choices you make are correct. So I always made the wrong choice. My skirts were always like a little too short, or my top would be like a little too, So my dad was always getting pulled in the back room in our church to be like, make sure she doesn't wear that again, or make sure that she didn't show up in that again. And and that's embarrassing, and like that's like a little degrading, I feel like.
It's very degrading. It's very shaming as well. So when you're sitting there and you're being interrogated, and I'm really honing in on this part because this is when it seemed like your life drastically changed from this moment on. So you're sitting there and they're interrogating you, these elders. How were you responding to them?
I don't even remember. I think I like astral projected myself somewhere else. I just sat there. I just took it. I didn't know what else to do. I think because I knew, I mean, they were talking about disfellowshipping me. Kind of like, they're like, well, we don't know if it has to go that far yet. So we're going to talk about it later and we'll let you know. And something in my mind was just like, lie, tell them how sorry you are, tell them how bad you want to like stay, tell them how bad you want to like get your faith back, or do whatever you have to do, like say whatever you have to say. And that's just what I did. I told them like, I'm just struggling in my faith. I don't know if I believe in God anymore. Like I really need help. I don't need to be pushed away. Like, please don't take my family away. And I remember for a whole week they waited to tell me if they were going to take my family away from me.
How does that work? They tell you, like, when they say we're going to take your family away from you, I mean, you're 15 years old, you're a minor, so that's not even legal. How exactly, what does that mean to take your family away from you at such a young age?
I mean, at 15, I don't think that my parents like would have kicked me out. I think they would have dealt with it like as best they could. But it means like no one else in my family is allowed to talk to me. No one else at the congregation is allowed to talk to me. I don't exist, basically. And unless like my mom is going to, unless it's like something pertaining to like a family matter, like, in instances where you have to be together, those are the only times that you can talk to that person.
Wow. So you're completely shunned, and then you're not allowed back in is it the church or the temple?
You're not, well, so like you still have to go to the Kingdom Hall, even though you're disfellowshipped. I mean, if you're disfellowshipped, you don't want to go, you obviously don't. But if you want to get back in, you have to go. And they make you sit like either in the back or up at the very front, like some weird place. And you sit and no one talks to you, no one looks at you. You just sit and you're quiet and you can't comment, you can't read scriptures. You just sit there, listen to the meeting and sing the song and go home. Like you have to be like the first to leave when it's over. And
so it's some
just
hardcore
like
psychological abuse.
It's to like, I remember, so there were two sisters and they're sitting next to each other in the congregation and they're talking like this. One of them is disfellowshipped and the other one is talking to her, just having a conversation like sisters. And she got in trouble for talking to her sister because they were at the church.
Wow. So how long is that psychological abuse where they just pretend you're dead supposed to go on? Let me guess, it's different for everybody, right?
TDA or like TBA, like TBD, to be announced, basically there's a whole process that you have to go through that's not even a guarantee that it'll actually mean anything. You have to like write a couple of letters explaining why you deserve to come back or why you're so sorry or what you're doing to like make amends now or whatever pertaining to like whatever the incident was, and how you've like progressed spiritually during this time. And then they like meet with you and like see where you are and if you're like making progress, which it's such a vague, how do you make progress? You can't talk to anyone, you can't do anything, you can't comment, you're just stuck in a box. How do you make progress when you're stuck? And then so eventually, like someday, maybe if you're good enough, they'll let you come back in and they make an announcement. Oh, when you get disfellowship, a man walks up to the podium, a different man than like it's a special position of person comes up to the podium, opens a letter and says the following person is no longer a Jehovah's Witness, closes the letter and goes and sits back down and it's dead silent. Not even a pin drop. That is the most shameful thing you can ever imagine. And they make you come. Basically you have to come.
Wait, the person who they're disfellowshipping has to be there for that?
Most of the time, yeah. Like they would like you to be there.
I bet they would. So the person who's being disfellowshipped is sitting there and they're like, this is disfellowshipped, and he is just supposed to take it and then they leave afterwards, like right away?
I mean, you can, if you want to get up in front of everyone after just having that announcement, you can, I don't know how I would have done that. I never thought about it. Like,
wow.
I don't know.
Did you see that happen to people in your Kingdom Hall?
It's the worst. It's so cringy. Oh God, it's like the worst feeling ever.
Yeah, I can tell you it still like makes you cringe just thinking about it.
Yeah.
That's absolutely insane. Has anybody ever said anything when they did that? Like, did anybody ever like gasp or stand up or anyone just shout or anything?
I remember a couple people like, like, oh my gosh, but that's about it. Like, that's relatively the only kind of emotion that you're supposed to show, because it's supposed to be a dignified experience, right? It's supposed to be a loving arrangement. That's what they consider it to be. We're doing this because we love you. We're punishing you because we love you and we want you to come back, but we're not going to talk to you so that you'll be desperate for our attention and desperate for our love, and you'll be forced to come back.
We're going to treat you like shit because we love you.
It's
Wow.
really bad. It's not right. And the worst part about it is that there is really no biblical reasoning for it. It's actually something that the Catholics used to do, and the Jehovah's Witness organization in its formative years condemned the Catholic Church for shunning their members and said that it was an unholy and ungodly practice. And this was like back in the early 1900s. But then they later adopted this arrangement like in the 1960s or 70s, something like that. And it's just so convenient just to keep people in or to keep people's families hostages from them. And they used to have an option for you where if you wanted to like formally disassociate yourself from the religion, like you could write a respectful letter and just let them know, like, this isn't for me anymore and I'm going to go this way. And up until the 1980s, you wouldn't be disfellowshipped for that. They were like, oh, okay, it's not for you anymore. That's fine. But in 1980, they changed that thinking. They changed that teaching to where you would automatically be disfellowshipped. And most people consider you to be an apostate of the faith if you disassociate. And if you're considered an apostate, then you're basically the devil. And no one talks to you and everyone's afraid of you. Like, there are so many people that have reputations in my old community because they like dissented from the religion. Really, like, these people are just, their eyes have just opened. They've just seen the light, basically. Like, they've seen the truth for what it is.
Wow. So it really is like Scientology, where they become what Scientologists call a suppressive person, and you are completely shunned. Completely. Wow, that is, oh my gosh, it's such a cult experience, and it's a horrible thing, and that's such a horrible thing to go through. And the fact that they put people on blast in the front of the church, and even like try and make them be there, that's so abusive. Can you tell me, after that night happened and they're all mad because you have a MySpace and an Instagram, what was life like for you from there until when did you leave the house?
So yeah, I left my house like 18 and a half-ish. I did what they asked me to do because they're my parents and I respect them. And in a way, it was like trying to make the last few moments count for what they were. And I could have done a better job at that, because I remember being really mad and really angry at them all the time and always fighting and always being like tense and anxious in my house and just like keeping things from them. Like,
I mean, but that was also a way to protect yourself, because you had grown men come into your house and verbally assault and harass you and ask you inappropriate questions. So nobody can blame you for hiding, things about your life.
Yeah. It is what it is. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Yeah, I did what they did. I did what they asked me to do because it's just the kind of person that I am. And it sucked for a long time because it was like, this is obviously not what I'd rather be doing, what I'd likely be doing if it were my choice. But I tried to do the best that I could. I still like went out in their ministry service, and I still raised my hand to comment at the meeting and pretend to be smart for 30 seconds. And just, I don't know, like I did the thing because it is what it was. And I was miserable inside. I was really depressed.
What would you say were the biggest differences that you noticed in your home life from before that night and after? What were a couple of big things that really changed? I think that's important to know, because it was pretty much like you were in the group and then all of a sudden you were pretty much on the outside.
My parents stopped seeing potential in me.
They stopped seeing potential. What potential did they see in you beforehand?
Just I don't know, like just to get, marry a nice guy, do, be a faithful person, have a nice family, or, go be a missionary or be, something that I'm not.
Wow. So just for having an Instagram, a Twitter, and a MySpace, you were looked at like a bad person. Wow.
And it was not just my parents, it was other people in the congregation too.
So they knew too?
Well, that's how they found out, was because someone ratted on me. Someone found it and told.
Wow.
Because that's what you're told, but that's what they're taught. They're taught that if you see someone acting a mess and you turn them in, you're supposed to give them the chance to come up for themselves, to come out with it themselves. That was never given to me. I never had that opportunity. And I don't know if it's because I was a child and I'm not granted the same grace or whatever, but yeah. So I think, I'm sorry, what are you?
No, you're fine. Did you I asked you what you answered about the potential, and that's how they started treating you different. Did you end up deleting your MySpace and Instagram and Twitter to appease them, or you just went ahead and did you?
Had it. I kept like it up very more private, like a lot more private, but I still had it because I needed that more than ever. Who else did I have?
Right.
Other than, friends that I had online or people that I didn't even know, which is so funny because I'm like friends with a lot of these people, like still. Like I have a lot of just internet friends that I've never met in real life, but have like seen me like grow up and like become the person that I am today. And a lot of those people have been like more there for me than my own family sometimes.
That's not surprising when you're dealing with people from a fundamentalist background. That's unfortunately not surprising at all. When you found these people who understood you and maybe had even gone through some of the same things you did you look at it as like a means of like, okay, like I found a group, they get me, and like, did you plan an escape? How did you end up leaving?
I didn't. I think at the point where I was when that happened with the elders and everything, like I knew that it was like weird that what my parents believed was like weird and that it wasn't for me, but I didn't think of it as like a harmful thing. Because it was just the way that I was raised,
Right.
just conditioned to think that that's okay,
Right.
that happened. So I was still like very much in the mindset of like, well, maybe it is the true religion and I'll figure that out. I'll get to that bridge, I'll cross that bridge when I get there. But I remember, I was buying less and less into it, like just trying to keep my mental sanity, right? And I remember being like in a Sunday service and I was just like barely paying attention, like just enough to scratch the surface. And this man really started talking about being weary of the danger of, being weary of the danger of independent thinking. Like literally actually thinking for yourself. And I tell you, when my jaw like almost dropped because like, what do you say? What do you say? How do you, what? And so like, I remember I got up, like I excused myself. I got up, I went to the restroom. I looked on my phone and like Googled, I Googled it and I was like, Jehovah's Witness cult. And everyone was like, hi, hello, yes, you have arrived. I was like 16 or 17 years old when this happened. This was like 2015. And I was like, oh my God. I had to go back out into a room full of people listening to a person tell them not to think for themselves. And to know that it's a cult and that it's a lie and that it's been a lie this whole time and I can't say anything.
Sounded like you were having like an existential crisis. Like,
yeah, like it all, and then I just saw it all so much more sinisterly. Like from that point forward, I was like, oh my God, everyone is trapped. Like everyone's being taken advantage of. Everyone's being mentally and emotionally abused. Like sometimes financially abused too, or at least manipulated. And
Mm.
Yeah.
And when you finally left and you moved out of your parents' house, how old were you and did life get better for you?
Um, I don't know. I went through a lot, even after I left my parents' house or left my parents' church, like just in my own life. And I was 18 on my own. I like met this girl on Facebook and she needed a roommate and I was making $9 an hour. So she was like, "You can live here for like 120 bucks a month." And I was like, "Cool." Like that's awesome. And she just like took me in. And then I don't know, I've just really been like hustling my way more and more. Like I started with a room and then I got a room and a bathroom and now I have a room and a kitchen and a bathroom and another room. So we're doing
Yeah.
good. We're making changes. We're making progress.
Yes.
Um, and it's like my parents had been there for me, like financially. Um, like they've helped me kind of establish myself, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they might have like felt guilty a little bit that I
Mm.
was on my own, so young, not prepared for anything. Because they kicked me out pretty fast.
Wait, they
Like
kicked you out?
they sat me down. They're like, "We think it's time that you leave. It's
Wow.
like we're gonna give you a couple of days,
A
find a
couple of
place."
days?
Yeah.
And you were 18?
I was like starting my first semester of college. Yeah.
Wow. And I mean, is that the norm in a Jehovah's Witness family or?
Uh-uh. I know a lot of families like where their kids like have never left their parents' home. Like that's not uncommon. But like because like there's no real appeal to being a young single person as a Jehovah's Witness. And you really ultimately just want to get married so that your like actual life begins. I don't know. In my opinion, that's how I see it. I'm sure there's tons of like single, 30, flirty, and thriving Jehovah's Witnesses. But that's how I saw it. Was like there's just no use in it. You don't get to have the real, actual young adult experiences and like the bumps and bruises of your early 20s. Like you're just not allowed any of that grace to actually experiment and find out who you truly are.
Right. Right. Wow. Ugh, that would be so difficult. Now you're in your mid 20s. And what do
Oh God,
you
don't say that.
I'm in my mid 30s. It's okay. So you're in your mid 20s, and what do you do now? And I noticed that you're covered in tattoos, which I
Hmm.
love. And
Yeah.
so you're very expressive, and it seems like you're really owning who you are. Do you feel like you've come into who you are?
Yeah. I think there's something about knowing that someday your family could just cut you off that makes you kind of a little bit hard, like just a little bit more independent. I definitely feel like I had to adapt. I don't know, like I had to cultivate a little bit of a hustler mentality a little bit just to because I don't know if that's going to be there for me. That's not a sure backup plan. So I have to do what I have to do to keep it pushing. And my independence and my freedom has always been my number one priority. And I will do anything to keep that, to protect that. That is the most important asset that I have, is my mind, and that I have ownership of my own mind. And I think who I am now, I had to go through a lot, not even just this, to become who I am today. And I still don't think that I've really reached my final form. But I get a little bit closer every year. And the more that I look back on my childhood, the more I realize, and the less angry I am at my family, because I know that they're victims too. And it's not their fault what happened. And they did what they did because they loved me, and they think that that's how things should happen. Like that's just what they have. Those are the tools that they were given. So I can't really hold them accountable for just doing what they know.
Hmm. And what do you do now?
Now, I'm a content creator. On
You're a what?
YouTube, content creator.
Oh, yay.
Yeah, so I do that. I'm on YouTube, and I'm amateur model, and
Okay.
got multiple streams of income, and I have a 9 to 5 like everyone else, but
And you're not in an
definitely.
MLM?
Not in an MLM, thank goodness. I love my 9 to 5. I get health insurance. I get 401k.
Yes, benefits.
Yes.
That's wonderful. What do you feel, do you still identify as a Jehovah's Witness at all?
No. I used to be. It's so funny. I used to be like super non-denominational Christian, which is why I have like a lot of Christy tattoos. um, and that's not for me anymore either. I think my philosophy now is like I wake up every day and I do try to be more like Jesus, just in the way that I'm graceful and that I'm understanding, that I'm accepting, that I'm loving. Because I think that that's all you have to be. I think you can leave everything else behind. And that's the core message of it, is just to be a loving person. I just wake up every day and try to be a good person.
Yeah, just try not to be an asshole. What a concept. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you feel, besides talking with like-minded people online,
Mm-hmm.
who had similar experiences, what do you feel has helped you through all of this? So did you get in therapy? Did you read any books?
Yeah.
Was there a certain experience that really helped you?
Yeah, absolutely. I watch a lot of YouTube videos, actually. There is a very robust ex-Jehovah's Witness community on YouTube. And so I got really involved in a lot of that. And that's helped me, like, when I'm feeling down about missing my family, I'll like go and watch a video and remember, like, this is why I'm doing this. This is why it matters. And that's been really helpful to me. And also just like having a support system. Not necessarily people who were ex-Jehovah's Witness or like were ex-fundamental anything. Like my boyfriend grew up like Wiccan. So
Really?
he's like, yeah, he like totally doesn't I like made him watch videos about Jehovah's Witnesses so that he could understand what I was like up against.
Right.
And yeah, and I did like I've done like writing. I used to like write like an anonymous blog that I went and found the other day, and I was like, oh my god, so tragic. But it's like that I was 18 when I was writing that stuff, so that's like real and raw, like in the moment of what I was actually going through.
Right.
And some of the stuff that I was reading like to my boyfriend was so like powerful, like stuff that I not that I forgot that I felt, but just that I guess I forgot like the actual weight and pressure of. Because it's something that I walk with every day still.
Right.
It's like I don't know how to take down an organization like that. It's like there's so many of them and there's one of me. And yeah, but I think that there is cause for hope, because they had they would like do a census of their members every year and release their numbers out. And I guess last year they had an actual decline, the first ever recorded decline in membership in record time. And it's funny because their theology says that people should be like coming more and more and more as like the end is drawing near, but people are like falling off. And in 2015 in Australia, the Australian Royal Commission found 1,006 cases of unreported child like CSA. Like,
wow.
And that's actually what got me like disgusted and angry, was to hear that happened when the same year that I was turning 18, that I was graduating high school. And I remember like watching those live streams, like the court inside the actual Australian courtroom of the real members of my parents' church lying to the Australian government for their right to keep secret records of child abuse. That's what they're in the Supreme Court fighting for right now. They're fighting for churches' rights to keep and maintain secret records.
Wow. Oh my gosh, that is so disturbing. And how long has that been going on?
I mean, at least since 2002, because there was a Dateline or like a 2020 special, something like that, on Jehovah's Witnesses about how they had this secret database that they kept the names of predators on and where they lived and what happened and everything, but they're not reported. They're not going to the police, and nothing's actually being done about it. And these people aren't actually even being disfellowshipped either. They're not
disfellowshipped?
No, they're not being removed from the congregation in most cases, because they have a loophole called the two witness rule, where
I've heard of this. Go on.
Yes, two people need to be witness to a wrongdoing for it to have really happened.
That sounds like a rule that protects nobody but abusers.
Literally.
Wow. So these people can be, I'm guessing the majority of these SA cases are men in the church, can commit all these horrible acts on minors, but yet you having a Twitter and a MySpace and an Instagram, you're practically disfellowship, but we'll give them a pass. Wow. That is shocking. And the sad thing is, like, there's so many, that type of stuff is covered up in so many fundamentalist religious organizations all the time.
Oh,
and it's sickening. It's terrible. I'm glad that they're having a decline in members.
There's a lot to that. There are stories. I mean, they're obviously not my stories to tell, but I know, like, firsthand people that I grew up with in the same congregation that had instances like that happen where nothing was done. It never went anywhere. And it's disgusting. It's awful. It's horrible. I have a niece that I don't barely know, right? She's like 3 years old. And that terrifies me. It terrifies me that nothing's being done about it. And they're just going unreported. Like, not to the police, not to anyone who can actually do something about it. Like, they'll take it to a judicial hearing, a judicial committee within the church. Like, they actually have some kind of authority to do something about it. And they tell people sometimes not even to go to the authorities. And in states that they do not have to legally, they're not mandated reporters, they don't. They tell you to go to the organization's legal help desk, which that person most of the time is a paralegal, not even a real lawyer.
Right. Wow. So you're worried about your niece growing up in that type of environment?
Of course. I'm worried about any child growing up in that environment, like, not alone, let alone growing up with the mindset and how much that messed me up. Just even the actual religion and the actual structure itself. But
right.
The fact that there's, like, this other thing happening behind the background that people like my parents and my brother and his wife are not made privy to. They're not being given the full picture, the full scope of what they're actually signing up for when they join in. And it's wrong. It's wrong that they're not allowed to learn about their own religion, that they're not allowed to seek out other, like, outsider information.
That's by design. That was my next question. Have you asked them about it? Have you told them about what's happening?
I don't know how. I really don't. I mean, every time my mom just sent me pictures of my niece. And I, like, haven't seen her in, like, 6 months. So I mean, it just breaks my heart every time. Like, I don't know how to say that. Because, like, I've had conversations with my family before, and it always comes down to, well, do you really think that we're stupid enough to join something harmful? Or do you really think that that we would be doing something that was wrong? Yes, people are manipulated into doing things that are wrong all the time.
Right.
It's so easy.
Yeah.
If you were raised a certain way and conditioned to believe that your whole life, of course, you could co-sign any kind of foolishness if that's what you're brought up to believe in.
And it's not about being stupid or smart. It's just about being a human being with vulnerabilities who can get sucked into these types of things.
Exactly,
Did you notice any type of recruitment tactics that they use that made you uncomfortable?
Yes. A lot of time when someone new comes in who's, like, a convert, who's not been born in, who has no, like, previous association, it's because they're a very vulnerable person or they're looking for a community. Like, it's definitely the stereotype, like, the person who has no friends or has no family or, is not doing well in life or has a partner that's not invested in them or, whatever. That's very common to see. Like, a new person is usually someone who's, like, coming from, a place of, like, hurting, or maybe they just lost. Okay. So let's say that you're, like, out in the door-to-door ministry or whatever, and you knock on someone's door and they answer and they tell you that, like, someone in their family just recently passed away. their first knee-jerk reaction is to preach about their resurrection hope, because they believe that everyone who's died now who didn't know the name of Jehovah will be resurrected and given an opportunity to pass, like a test of faith in the new world order, like after Armageddon or whatever. And so to tell a person who's just experienced a loss like that they might be able to see their loved one in the future again is pretty manipulative. Like, it's pretty wrong. It's definitely wrong.
Do they seek out like that info right away?
Yes, they will write letters to people who posted in the obituaries. Known people to do that.
They go through obituaries in like online in the newspaper to target them to recruit?
I actually literally just got a letter in my mailbox the other day, like inviting me to their convention. So they do, like, they write letters and stuff to people, like, yeah. It's a little, like, invasive.
Oh, yeah. So in that, time to get a restraining order. So in that letter that they send out to these people who just had a family member pass away, and they're completely vulnerable and depressed and sad, is that when they tell them in the letter about the resurrection?
Yeah, like they'll cite like scriptures and stuff, like it's like a scripture in Revelation talking about like all, God will wipe away every tear from your eye and everything, and death will be no more, and neither sickness nor pain, and that's a really comforting thought. That's a really, my grandfather died when I was like 16.
I'm sorry.
It is what it is. And I remember that, like, kind of having that cognitive dissonance for a while of like, this person who was really important to me is passing away, but if I'm good enough, then I might be able to have them one more time or see them one more time. And then also feeling the way that I felt of like knowing that I don't really want to do this. Like, it does keep you in. It is a tactic. It's a manipulation tactic for sure.
One manipulation tactic that I saw in my fundamentalist upbringing and that I see just as prevalent today, especially during these crazy times during the pandemic, is talk of the rapture, and that the rapture is always near and you don't want to be left behind. And I remember being 7 years old and being terrified that maybe I wasn't good enough and I would be left behind. And I look back now as a 34-year-old woman and I get so angry because I'm like, no child should live with that fear. Did you feel that kind of fear growing up?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because it's not so much that you're baptized, and it's not so much that you say you're a Jehovah's Witness or that you go to all the meetings. You have to be very devout, very practicing, like totally buy in, cannot have any doubt. If you have doubt, you need to figure it out. Like, they don't even tell you necessarily what the requirements are, but if you're not doing your absolute best, you're not exhausting yourself, then don't even think about being counted in the paradise. Like, it's not going to happen. And they're very vocal about that pressure that they put on people. Like, make sure you're doing enough. If you feel like you have time left over, if you have time to be relaxing at home, watching TV, watching the sports game, then you're not doing enough. If you have time to have hobbies and other interests outside of this, then you're not doing enough.
They don't want you to have hobbies or watch TV?
Basically not. Like, I mean, they don't come out and say that, but it's so blatant, like, it's so blatantly obvious that that's what they mean with their different, like, propaganda that they put out. Like, there's a new video that they're releasing this summer of, like, this dad and daughter video, and the daughter, they're supposed to do family worship every, like, one day a week. And the whole video is about how the dad is like tired one day, like that on that day, he's like, oh, we'll do it next week. And then it like flash forwards through his daughter growing up to be like rebellious. And she's like trading her pink cardigan in for a leather jacket and putting on dark lipstick and hoop earrings and walking out to meet her boyfriend.
Earrings.
Not those earrings. Like, it's so hilarious. And like they're she like walks out to the door and her boyfriend comes and gets her and everything, and the dad is still sitting there watching TV because one night he was tired. His whole daughter's life is over And that's the
Oh my.
mentality that they want you to have. But you know what's so sad about that is that I'm sure that that's how my parents feel.
Oh, for
I'm
sure. For
yeah,
sure.
I'm sure that they feel like we never did enough. We didn't press hard enough. We didn't get through to them. Like,
Yeah, of course.
that
It's because
sucks.
it's fundamentalist religions. It's always shame and guilt that is
Mm-hmm.
put on people so heavy, and it drives them. And like you said, that keeps people in that guilt and that shame, and it keeps them silent and complicit. And of course, they're probably wondering, where did I mess up? Why did my daughter leave? What did I cause? What did I do? They probably think I watched too much TV. It can be like the littlest thing that can weigh on somebody so much when you're indoctrinated into something so toxic.
And well, when the stakes are as high as I'm going to be dead and you're never going to see me again, like forever, like, and you're going to continue to live on forever. You have to live your life forever without one of your children. I'm sure that guilt is a lot more immense and a lot more just like overwhelming than I can really imagine. Like my mom told me about it one time, about how my dad will like cry to her about it, just about how like he doesn't know what's going to happen to me. Like he's really genuinely concerned that I'm going to die at Armageddon.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely a huge concern in fundamentalism. And it's just so, I just see so much needless suffering and despair in fundamentalism. And it's sad because you have a full life to live that should be yours, that should not be under such control and toxicity. It's so sad. What would you want people to know? Maybe somebody who's even where you were when you were creeping around on the internet when you weren't supposed to, and trying to find that support that you didn't feel you got anywhere else. What do you want people to know about life then versus now for you?
Yeah, I mean, life then, I felt very like a bird in a cage, wanting to fly free and only being limited to what what is around me or what I'm being told is supposed to be my life. And it's really scary to move on from everything that you've ever known. And you might be very afraid, but you got this. And then when you get out and when you actually start to see the world for what it really is and how much of a beautiful place it really is, you'll understand why they wanted you to stay away. Because you don't need them. You don't need to defer your own happiness for a paradise that's never coming when you could be happy right now today.
Right.
And it's okay if I say something to my mom and dad.
Sure.
I don't know if you're ever going to watch this video. And I hope maybe someday you do. And I want you to know that I'm not angry, and that I don't hate you. I'm not upset with you for raising me this way. And I did this because I think it's important that you know what is really happening behind the scenes of what you're being told. Because I love you enough not to lie to you and tell you that you're fine or that this is okay or to allow this to continue to happen. Both of my parents are like in their mid-50s. And so that's 5 decades of their whole lives that they both lost being slaves to a system that really doesn't care about them. And yeah, I think that if you are struggling as a Jehovah's Witness or any faith or whatever, it gets better. It gets more normal over time. And I feel like there are good things that being raised that way did for me. Like, I think that it gave me a good public speaking voice, like, because I had to talk to strangers, knock on their door, and try to sell them a magazine. I was like the top agent at my job because I was like such a good salesperson. I'm just not afraid to talk to people. Like, you can't faze me. Like, that kind of stuff is actually pretty cool, and I'm glad that I've been able to get some sort of positivity out of it. But yeah, like, you become more used to it, I guess. Like, it gets easier as time goes on.
So you said you sold a magazine. Were you selling things as a kid?
Not like selling things, but you're like selling someone on the religion, basically. Like, when you go out in the ministry, like you're trying to start conversations with people, to start a Bible study, to start a conversion process. So that's like how they get new members, is like their door-to-door work. But that, I mean, since COVID, they haven't been able to do that. So a lot of them have like resorted to doing the letter writing because it's a lot more social distant, like safe, I guess. And I don't know. It's weird. So that's a weird experience. Like you're just knocking on strangers' doors on a Saturday morning, unannounced, and trying to convert them. And that is just the most awkward conversation. I like ran into people that I knew sometimes, like from school. Oh my gosh, when you run into someone from school, it's mortifying.
Aww.
I'm like, oh my God, someone like smushed me, like.
That's totally understandable. Oh my goodness. What did you ever have somebody react crazily to you?
Yeah. Oh my God. We had people that would like scream in our faces, like, you're a cult, you're a cult. Like, this is wrong. Like, you shouldn't be doing this. And it's wrong that you have your kid out here doing this. And now, obviously, I'm like, that man is not incorrect. But he still could have gone about it in a different way.
For sure. So when
Yeah.
you would hear those things when you were young, did it
Mm-hmm.
did it make you start to wonder, is this not normal? Or were you just like, did it just turn you away from them?
I don't know. I think like as a kid, like they kind of prime you that people are going to be, not like well receiving of your message.
Okay.
And they have a persecution complex because they teach that they're the one true religion, obviously, and therefore they're the target of lots of hatred and persecution, which is not untrue. Like they're unfairly banned in certain places of the country. I don't know. I have feelings about that, but so yeah, I mean, like they're not without persecution, but they definitely like lay it on thick. Like it's like a fetish. Like it's fetishized. Like if you have a story where someone was mean to you, the worse, the more violent, the more scary, the better. Like they want those like really cherry picked, martyrdom level stories. And it's pretty gross, honestly. Like they make a lot out of like different persecution stories or like different hardship stories that people have like in their programming, like use those to like emotionally manipulate people into buying more in, and just they play like the sappy music and the tears in the eyes. It's a whole production.
It is a production. Are you in Australia?
No.
You're in the US. Okay. Because you mentioned Australia earlier and I was like, is she in Australia? But I thought you were in the US. Okay. What are your feelings on where you said that they're not allowed to be in the country, and where is that and why?
Yeah, so specifically like in Russia right now, Russia banned all of their like they're not allowed to meet in groups anymore. They're not allowed to like do their ministry. They're not even allowed to have their own literature, I don't think. Like they can't be caught having their own literature, because like they're seen as an extremist group in Russia because they have like really not like anti-government beliefs, but they do have some like, well, we don't believe that the government is like really the true government and we only subscribe to God's government. Basically like thinking that they're like, I guess the Russian authorities are not okay with that idea and they consider it to be anti-government. It's not really, in my opinion, because they're law-abiding people. But like Jehovah's Witnesses by and large are very good people, like very kind, very loving, good people. And they're law-abiding folks, and their literature tells them to be like law-abiding in the land where they live. But in Russia, like they have banned their services and stuff, and people are being thrown in jail. And they had like a whole letter writing campaign to the Russian government to say like why this is wrong and everything. And I have to feel for that. Like I think that people should be allowed to think and believe how they want as long as they're not hurting other people. And I guess like I don't know. There's a whole debate in it on the community. I don't know. People see it both sides. I can see good and bad. Right. But ultimately, like I wouldn't want my parents to be thrown in jail for the thoughts that they have in their head. Like that's really scary to me.
Right. Yeah. Here in America, we're just like, people can pretty much say anything and you're not persecuted for it. Well, thank you so much for coming on and being so brave. Is there anything else you wanted to add to anything, to anybody?
No, I think that I'm really happy that I was able to reach out and able to connect with you. And I really appreciate you for trying to spread more awareness on this, because it's like there's a lot of stuff going on in the world all the time, and it's impossible to know what things you should be upset about. And right, like we just live in a constant flood of that information all the time. So I think it's really cool that like there's somebody who's not necessarily like in the ex-Jehovah's Witness community trying to bring awareness to it, because the more voices and the more attention that can be brought to the subject, the more people will leave and will be saved. And I think like younger people are coming out more because they have access to the internet. They're asking the same questions that I was asking. They're having the same experiences, but it's like the older generation, like people like my parents that have been indoctrinated for so long, that need to hear it, that need to know the truth. And I guess, okay, you have a win-win scenario when you're questioning your faith. Either you're right and you get to live your life comforted by the fact that you are right, or you find out that you're wrong and you can move on and find out what is really right for you. It's a win-win either way. So why are you being told not to question?
That's a very good point. Kai, thank you so much for coming on and sharing what you did. I think you're so brave. And for my audience, like I gave her the chance to be anonymous. And even now, like if you email me after this interview and you're like, okay, I want to be anonymous, like I would happily do that, because I know how hard it is to come out like that. And I know just how devastating it can be to someone or to people who know them. I think you're really brave to have gone through what you went through and now living your life for you and doing things for you. And that's really inspiring to see. So thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you so much, Josie.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. You're amazing. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so I have a YouTube channel, which is just my name, Kai, which I guess I can give you the link. And
Perfect.
I'm also like just on Instagram, and I can give you my at too. It's at my Instagram at is Jesus X Craves with an underscore.
Jesus X Craves?
Okay. Like craves, like I'm craving chocolate.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you so much, Kai.